there are some important changes going on right now in the Winston-Salem and Greensboro real estate market, and it makes a big difference whether you're buying or selling. And I'm pretty certain if you watch this whole video, you're going to have a better understanding of the real estate market right now in Winston-Salem and Greensboro than 90% of the real estate agents that are out there. Plus, you're going to know why this is happening, and this is going to be important whether you're planning to buy or sell either right now or even through the beginning of 2025. I just negotiated a deal for a buyer where we got a $25,000 discount on the sales price on a house, and another one where we got a nice little price reduction. We got some of the closing costs paid for the buyer by the seller. We even got a riding lawnmower in the deal, and there's been a couple of others, but things are changing. And actually, I think it's the best opportunity we've seen for buyers in years, and I think it's going to be this way not just now, but for the next few months as well. Let's talk about it. If you need help buying or selling real estate, my contact information is on the screen and in the description below. But first, nationally, we saw, the Fed dropped interest rates a few weeks ago, and if you remember the last market update where we talked about that, I said where a lot of this has already been kind of baked in when they first started having these big discussions about rates are coming down, rates are coming down. So we did not see mortgage rates move as much as some people thought they would. So when the Fed made this announcement, we saw them come down a little bit, then come back up, and now actually today when I'm recording them, they're up a little bit again. So we've been in a range of around 6% to 6.25, somewhere in there, but generally low sixes have been kind of the range since the Fed made that announcement. So not a huge change in where we were at before the announcement. Now, to be fair with that, in national news, we do expect rates to continue to trickle down over the next few months. The Fed said he'll probably drop rates 2 more times the rest of the year, but just remember that's not directly tied to mortgage rates. So the mortgage rate market is anticipating this. We will see, I think, rates, the general consensus for mortgage experts is that rates will continue to decline. Just remember they don't drop, in huge big chunks. They kind of stagger up and stagger down and come down a little bit more and things like that. That's how mortgage rates tend to go. And my advice on that in general is trying to time the market in regards to mortgage rates is generally not a good idea. If you can afford the house at today's rates and you're not maxing out your budgets and you're comfortable with that payment, do that now and then refinance when the opportunity presents itself, be it in 6 months or a year or 18, whatever that case may be. Look for opportunities to refinance when they come, but if you're timing that on a purchase, you can get disappointed. So obviously the Fed rates are the big national news, but let's take a look at the local numbers in the Winston-Salem and Greensboro real estate markets. Again, these numbers are for MLS wide. It will vary a little bit by neighborhood, but you're going to get a really good picture of what's going on right now. So the first one to talk about is closed number of sales. Total closed sales were just over 1,500, and that is about 13% down from this same time last year. So 13% fewer sales than this same time last year, but this is over 35% fewer sales than just a couple years ago. So a huge drop in the last couple of years in total closed sales. The volume of sales have really been declining in our market. And that reflects what we've seen across the country, just fewer sales in general. Now, something a little bit more interesting is average sales price. And if you see on the chart where I have the circles, you see some of this is seasonality. Average sales price tends to come down around this time of year generally. But the important thing to point out here is this is a little bit steeper drop and a little bit sooner in the year than typical. This is where there's going to be some opportunity here. So we're still near all-time highs in average sales price, but the drop was steeper sooner, and here's where I think the opportunities are going to come in. Buyers, if you remember, just last year or a couple years ago, if a house was on the market for 7 days, you're like, well, what's wrong with this house? Totally different story this year, and this is where some opportunity comes in. We see these houses that have been on the market for over 7 days, 14 to 21 days. That's when sellers are really starting to panic, and I'm going to show you they shouldn't be in the numbers in just a minute, but sellers are starting to panic when they get into this range, and I've been able to get some great deals for buyers in this market, even though we're still at near all-time high prices. When we can see kind of some of that panic in these situations coming in, there's a chance to get a better deal than you would have. And then also we see some sellers that still want to test the market. That's going to make that house stay on the market, even longer because they're overpriced. That's an opportunity to get a really good deal, better than you would have if they started correctly in the first place as well. So that's where the opportunity comes in the average sales price. All right, so let's move on to the supply and demand numbers now that we've seen the overall numbers on the supply side on new listings. So in new listings this past month, we saw what is a typical seasonal drop on here. But I want to highlight in this chart where I have the yellow is that we've been in a range the last couple of years. If you see that range where we just have not been seeing the volume of new listings coming on the market the last couple of years, that is most likely due to what I call that lock-in effect, right? These people got some really low rates or refinanced into some really low rates, and they're just not willing to sell. So we're just seeing far fewer listings come on the market in general. That is one of the things that's really helped keeping prices propped up. We're just seeing fewer and fewer listings than we have previously come on the market, so that is helping prices to stay high because I think with the current buying conditions, if we saw a lot of more new listings come on the market, we would see prices decline more, but we're not seeing that because of that reason. So prices are still kind of propped up, even though we're in that range of far fewer listings. But like I said, even with fewer buyers than before, we're going to talk about that just in a minute. Prices would come down more, but let's keep going on the supply side. All right, next on the supply side in the Winston-Salem and Greensboro real estate market is total homes for sale. We're at just about 4,800 total homes for sale on the market. This is the biggest number we've seen in years in this. If you look back at the chart, I remember looking at Forsyth County when there were under, 500 or 600 homes for sale in the entire county. We haven't seen a number of 4,800 in years. And as a matter of fact, right now, this number is only about 10% behind of where we were pre-pandemic. So a lot more homes on the market, even with fewer listings. There are a lot more homes on the market, obviously because we're seeing fewer sales, right? So we're really starting to see supply build in the market. And speaking of that, the next one we're going to talk about is month supply of homes. This number also reached a new high since before the pandemic. The month supply of homes at just about 3 is about the exact same where we were in 2019 before the pandemic. So again, most we've seen in years and years. So, we're back into normal times, pre-pandemic times. Now, to be fair, 2019 in Winston-Salem and Greensboro, that market still was a seller's market. And 3% is not quite balanced, right? It still favors sellers, but it is much, much different now than it was in 2019. What I mean by that is there's just a lot more headwind on buyers, but we saw that the fewer number of listings is still kind of keeping that sales price propped up. There's a lot of pressure on sellers and some good opportunities for buyers in this. I expect the month supply of homes to continue to climb slightly. We're not going to see maybe not a giant jump, but this poses some trouble for sellers if they're not doing things right or if they're overpricing houses, which in turn means opportunity for buyers. Okay, moving on to the demand numbers. Remember when we talked about earlier how I was saying, remember if a house was on the market 7 days, if it made it past that opening weekend, you were like, what is going on with this house? Well, the first number I want to show you on the demand side is the median days on market. This jumped up also to 15 days. And this actually, even given seasonally, is a huge jump. This is 50% more days on market at this time this year than it was last year, and almost double what it was 2 years ago. So your eyes aren't deceiving you. When you start seeing some homes that have been on the market for a little while, you just have to change that thinking a little bit, where it's like, wow, what's wrong with this house? It's been on the market for 2 weeks. Well, guess what? The median days on market right now is 15 days. So remember when I said these sellers, they have in their mind that we're going to get offers and showings that first week, and then if we don't, something's wrong. Another place for sellers to reset their expectation, but also maybe a spot for buyers to swoop in and get a deal when the sellers are wondering what's going on. Is anybody ever going to buy my house? It's been on the market 16 days. I can't believe it. The market's crashing. Not necessarily the case, but could present a really good opportunity if you're looking to buy. Now remember, these numbers are MLS wide. We're still seeing houses get bought in the first weekend. We're still seeing some multiple offer situations, not near the number that we're seeing before. There's a lot less competition. And overall, remember, 15 days on the market is not forever. When I started real estate in 2014, if a house sold in a month, that was great. So again, we're just in the midst of this really changing perception of what's going on in the market with days on market, pricing, etc. So it's important to understand these dynamics. All right, next one, this is one of my favorite statistics. This is percent of list price. Now this came down also, and it didn't come down a ton, so not that exciting. It came down to 99.4%. So not a huge discount overall. Again, there are some opportunities in there that we discussed, but the more important thing to mention in this stat is the timing of it. Last year, we didn't see this number drop below 100% until December, when rates were at 7 and 8%. So when we've seen the lowest rates that we've seen in years, and we see this number start to come down in September, so we're looking at September's numbers at the beginning of October. When we see this decline this soon, that's an encouraging sign for buyers, but also a warning sign for sellers. Because for that percent to drop this soon in the year, in September, just coming out of summer, heading into fall, that is a big deal, much bigger than normal, because we didn't see those drops the last couple of years where we see those drops. Those weren't until December each year. So again, this is months sooner than it did last year and the year before. And I think we're going to continue to see this number drop over the next couple of months. I don't expect it to be a huge crash. Remember, still right now we're at 99.4%. But I do think this number is going to come down still over the next couple of months. With so much headwind like we've talked about, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. So we're more likely to see sellers accept lower offers because there are less competition. There are less, other demands that we're going to talk about in just a second here. There's just less activity overall. So what you're seeing in the actual numbers is not a huge drop. There does get to be some really good opportunities for buyers. Last on the demand side is shows per listing that I want to talk about. Shows per listing are down also. Now they're not down huge, they're down about 10%, but the showings per listing, the important thing is this is the lowest number of showings per listing that we saw since rates were around 8%. There's just, people are just not looking at homes as much as they were right now. Like if the average shows per listing right now is about 4.5, and I know it takes about 8 or 9 showings to get an offer, you can kind of math that out, whether you're a buyer or seller, right? We have to get at least 9 or 10 showings to try to get an offer if you're selling. And if you're a buyer and I'm going to schedule a showing for you and I'm not seeing packed with showings, this can set up those scenarios where, one, you don't have to make a decision on the house right then and there. If you don't want to, you have some time, maybe you can think about things, but more importantly, it's a time where you can adjust your strategy to get a better deal than you would just a couple months ago. So what do all these numbers mean? What does this mean for you, whether you're buying or selling? People have been telling me for years, I'm looking for a deal, I'm looking for a deal. Well, guess what? There's just not a lot of deals out there. Now there is a much better chance to get a deal than in recent memory, other than when maybe, rates were sky high. But in the most recent market, this is the best time to really get a deal. And to get a deal, you have to do what? You have to be willing to buy when not as many people are, right? That's when deals present themselves, right? When there are less buyers and there tend to be a little bit more sellers. Well, now is that time, and I think it's again going to be like that, but I think that time is going to be now through the next 3 to 4 months. But sellers, if you're selling in this market, and granted, people, we have to list and sell homes all the time for a variety of reasons. If you're selling in this market, you have to be wary, you have to shift your mind right. So we saw days on market or longer. So if it doesn't sell in that weekend, don't panic. If we see showings are down, if you're not getting a ton of showings, don't panic. Pricing your home correctly where the market is at now is really, really important, not aspiring to get a number. Condition and having your home show ready and staged properly with a great marketing plan is more important now than it's been in years. And we're in a growth market here still. Our market tends to buck the trends of the rest of the country, which we've talked about before. There are more people coming here than there are leaving, so we tend to be in a stronger market. So it's not a time for panic, but it is a time to be intelligent and make sure you have a clear plan. People buy real estate 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are always going to be transactions happening, maybe fewer than you would like, or maybe fewer than we're used to, at a little bit slower pace than used to, but people are always going to buy and sell real estate. So don't panic, have a plan. If you need help buying or selling real estate, I'd love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.